Hi folks, and welcome back to Meaningful Money. Okay, here I am in the Jackson's offices once again. It's the day after the budget. It's Thursday the 24th of March 2011 today, and as is customary on these occasions, I'm intending to bring you a very short summary of what the Chancellor said yesterday and how it's likely to affect you. Remember, Meaningful Money is now brought to you with the help of my good friends at Seven Investment Management, so thank you to them. Now let's dive into the detail here. Actually, in summary, it wasn't a sort of landmark budget. It wasn't full of stuff that we didn't expect, not really. One or two smallish surprises. But we, as is often the case these days, most of the detail was leaked before the event anyway. But here's what the Chancellor said and how it affects you. Let's look at tax first. Tax affects almost all of us. First thing to mention is that, well, we already knew that the personal allowance, which is the amount that everybody gets, that everybody can earn before they pay any income tax at all, that goes up in April to £7,475. We knew that anyway, but the Chancellor announced a further rise from next April 2012, another 630 quid up to £8,015. It's another step on the way to the personal allowance going up to £10,000, which is what the coalition government would like it to be. That personal allowance is now going to be indexed to Consumer Prices Index. That's a measure of inflation. There are two broad measures of inflation. Retail Prices Index, or RPI, and Consumer Prices Index, CPI. CPI is the lower one, so it just means that the personal allowance is going to go up more slowly than it might otherwise have done, and that will, I imagine, as earnings increase, mean that more people will pay income tax. But overall, the personal allowance is going up, so less people will pay tax in the sort of immediate term. The Chancellor mentioned that there's going to be what he calls a long and complex consultation on merging the income tax and national insurance regimes. Completely separate things. There's a video on national insurance. It's just a tax by another name. They're talking about merging those things, but that's not going to happen anytime soon. It's going to be a long and complex consultation. The other thing he said regarding income tax is that the very top rate of income tax, which is 50%, it stays in place for now. That was a measure introduced last year to deal with the deficit that we've got, but he did say that it's not intended to be permanent, so that's good news. So that's income tax. As far as inheritance tax is concerned, the one announcement was that the Chancellor announced a discount of inheritance tax for estates which give away more than 10% of the total estate to charity. So the idea is that if I die and 10% at least of my estate goes to charity, then what's left of my estate will get a discount on inheritance tax of 10%. So instead of it being a 40% tax charge, it'll be 36%. Now, everything else stays in place. The nil rate band, which is the first £325,000 of your estate, that's tax-free anyway. Gifts to charities are free anyway. So it's a little thing. It probably will make little difference really, but it's a good headline grabber from the Chancellor. So that's tax. Moving on to savings and investments now. There's two things mainly. The one that will probably affect most watchers of Meaningful Money will be that the ISA limit, the individual savings account limit, will be going up to 10,680 as of April. It's 10,200 at the moment. He also mentioned that National Savings and Investments, which is the government savings scheme, they will be reintroducing their very popular index-linked savings certificates, and that'll be happening in due course. No idea when, but that's good news. There's also what the Chancellor called sweeping changes to something called EIS schemes, Enterprise Investment Schemes. Now these are ways of incentivizing people to channel money into small companies. So it's good for sort of boosting the economy, and there are tax incentives basically for putting money in these schemes. I haven't dealt with EIS schemes or venture capital trusts, which are similar but different, so I won't say any more about those now, but perhaps I'll come back to those in a future video. Moving on to pensions then. The Chancellor talked about plans for a single tier state pension of 140 quid a week. Currently, it's a pretty complex system. You know, there's the state pension and then there's the state second pension, and pretty complicated. There are plans instead to sweep all that away and have a single tier flat state pension for everybody. But there's details of eligibility, a lot of details really still to come on that. What that will mean though is that currently it's possible to contract out of the state second pension through company pension schemes. That will almost certainly be abolished over time. Again, there's not really time here to detail what contracting out means, but there is an extra bit of pension that you can get from the government, but you have a choice if you're in a company scheme that instead of taking your benefits of that pension from the government, you can take it, you can sort of redirect part of your national insurance contributions and instead have that in your own pot. Fact is that that will be abolished. It's already planned to be abolished under certain pension schemes. It will almost certainly be abolished under all pension schemes shortly. The state pension or the state pension age rather, is going to be linked to longevity. Now, we're all living longer and being more healthy, perhaps myself excluded from that, but we're living longer, and so the state pension has got to pay out for longer on average. And so the state pension age, 65 currently, increasing to 66 soon, will very soon. Is my colleague Roger coming in? Feel free to come past, Rog. Say hello to Roger, everybody. Yeah. The state pension age is going to be linked to longevity, so if there's already plans for it to go up to 66. It will certainly go beyond that, 68 and possibly even higher over time. So that's pensions. Just a couple more bits. As far as businesses are concerned, probably the biggest surprise, we expected a 1% cut in the main rate of corporation tax, but the Chancellor instead announced a 2% cut, taking that rate down to 26%, and confirmed plans to cut that really by 1% a year over the next 3 years to get it down to 23% for 2014. So the Chancellor is trying to encourage growth in the economy by tax breaks for companies. Finally then, the odds and sods at the end, the bits that you know, the tabloids always talk about, beer, fags and fuel. There's no additional alcohol duty, so your wine and beer will stay as it is. There is an increase on cigarette duty though, that's going up by 2% above inflation, so it gets ever more expensive to drag smoke out of a stick. Surely that money can be put to better use. Council tax, which affects everybody that owns a house or lives in a house, is going to be frozen in England for this year. Not sure about Wales and Scotland, but I imagine those of you watching who live there will know the answer to that. There's going to be no rise in air passenger duty, one of the taxes you pay when you get on a flight, but private jets now will be included in that. Now, I'm not sure that the meaningful money demographic includes many private jet owners, but if it does, then just be aware you're going to have more tax to pay on your Learjet. And finally, there's announced something called a first buy scheme, which is a plan to help people get on the housing ladder. So they're going to make £250 million available for that. And how that will work is that you will get a 20% sort of very low rate loan from the government and from house builders, which will effectively be a deposit. You will also have to find a 5% deposit, so that's 25% overall. You can get a mortgage for the rest. That sort of 20% loan from the government and from the house builders will be extremely low rate. There'll be nothing to pay on it, no interest to pay for the first 5 years, and then it'll be very low interest after that. So it's just a bung really, and a way of helping people get onto the housing ladder, which is something that in this country we deem to be very important, owning houses. So that's it. No massive sweeping changes, most of it we already knew anyway. Leave any questions or comments under the video and I'll do my best to answer them. But thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.